like I said, Professor Dawes was supposed to be here, but the news caught up with us, and that is all about the protests against an anti-Islam film called Innocence of Muslims, which was published on YouTube, and that's why we invited Mr. Ahmed Al-Rawi and Mrs. Karin Willemse. Mr. Al-Rawi used to work as a spokesperson for the Red Cross in Iraq and is currently writing a book that's called Negotiating Islam on YouTube. And Ms. Willemse is doing research in the area of youth citizenship, Islam and globalization. She's a cultural anthropologist and she's working for the Islamic Research Project of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, among others. And they're both an assistant professor at the Erasmus University. Maybe it's good if we first have a look at what we are talking about here. It's a news item from Fox about the protests worldwide.
Today in Beirut, Lebanon, the leader of the Hezbollah terror group called the people to keep demonstrating. The protests there appeared peaceful, but diplomats at the U.S. Embassy have reportedly started destroying classified material as a precaution.
Anti-American violence is certainly mounting at this hour, literally around the world, as we were just showing you now in Lebanon. From Afghanistan over the weekend to Indonesia, Pakistan to India, protesters all over are clashing with police near U.S. embassies and consulates, putting our people at risk.
Mr. Al-Rawi, you are a Muslim yourself. What can be so insulting about a YouTube movie?
Well, for some devout Muslims, of course, depicting the Prophet Muhammad is something in such a way is insulting. And it's not only Muhammad. I mean, for Muslims, depicting any prophet is forbidden. So this is a rule they follow. So my interpretation of this is that Muslims in general, they have what we call the social contract. I mean, they respect other prophets. They don't allow anyone to, let's say, portray those prophets either in paintings, drawings, movies. So they expect the others to follow the lead, follow the same, let's say, policy, whatever. But when this doesn't happen, of course, some kind of anger is vented. So you see these protests. Of course, the kind of violence seen is not acceptable, but yeah, you see, you cannot control this kind of anger sometimes. Yeah.
Do you think it's insulting, the movie?
I can imagine it's insulting for certain groups of Muslims, yeah. But at the same time, I think that the writing, so the readiness of a lot of people, well, some places more than others, to get into the streets.
Because how many protesters are there? Some people say it's only 0.00007% of all the Muslims in the world.
Well, I wouldn't be able to correct you on that. In some places it's more than others. I think yesterday it was just told that in some places people are brought to the streets at a certain moment when cameras are there, and you know the next moment the area or the street around the embassy is empty again. So in some places there's more readiness to write in any way than in others. And at the same time I think it's problematic to see it just as a religious issue, that the writing in itself is just instigated because of religious sentiments. I think much more is going on underneath.
But maybe it's good, I don't know if everybody has seen the film we're talking. How many people have seen the Innocence of Muslim movie? Hands, please. Not a lot. Well, we can watch a fragment. We have 30 seconds. It's really, really Oscar material, if you ask me. But, by the way, it's not really clear if there is supposed to be a feature-length film of 2 hours.
Yeah.
But the only thing that's circulating on the internet is a 14-minute trailer, kind of like.
Yeah.
Right. Let's have a look.
Father, we are not stupid. I know, I understand, Father, but we must conceal this disgrace. You must raise him, take him. Raise him as one of your slaves if you must.
What shall I call him? To whom should I attribute him?
His name is Muhammad. And we could call him the Father Unknown.
I think you're right, my son.
Well, that's it. That's kind of the quality we're talking about. You said it's not about religion, the riots on its own. Can you explain that?
Almost never this kind of violence is about only one thing.
Because that's the impression we get here in the West, that people think someone insulted Mohammed, and that's why they're very angry right now.
Yeah, and I think it's, I mean, in itself, it's, let's say, discourse or rhetoric that has been easily used, let's say, by some instigators to get people to the streets. And journalists in the West have easily taken it up, you know, as, again, those Muslims that, you know, are not rational, they're just these emotional people that get to the streets and when the Prophet is attacked, and where's this freedom of speech that we all talk about. So what happens, in fact, is that both sides, I would almost say...
What do you mean by both sides?
Well, what we see as the other, the Muslims in the streets, just as you showed with Fox News, and the journalists, let's say, in the West, they are, in fact, you know, pitching each other game. They step into the same discourse of othering, as I call it. While I think a lot of those that take to the street are not even, you know, there particularly for protesting against America, for example. But they have a lot of grievances that have to do with the situation, and most of the time the economic situation that they're in. And
they're just angry because they haven't got a job. Is that what you're saying?
Well, very important, I think, the maker of the film, or at least those that the person that wrote the film, is a Copt living in America. And so the first protests were also in Egypt, because there is a kind of problem between Muslims and Coptic.
So again, it's getting more complex. This is not about insulting Muslims, but it's from an American filmmaker. But this is a clash between Coptic Christians and Muslims.
Yeah, you could say
within Egypt, within.
Yeah. A local/national issue has been taken up, and it has become a kind of example of a clash of civilizations that fits very well, neatly into the way that we look at Muslims in general.
Do you recognize this? Or?
Yeah, it could be one interpretation. Of course, other interpretations that this is just like one part of a sequence of other incidents, other encounters, like burning the Quran, like, for example, you have even Geert Wilders, the Fitna film, you have many other incidents, Salman Rushdie, Satanic Verses, long time ago, 1980. So these are all, I mean, a series of encounters. With each encounter, you see some kind of protest, you see some kind of rejection. So yeah, but of course, politics plays a role here. I mean, anti-Americanism is there. I mean, what happened in Libya? I mean, also there was some
that violence was clearly against the United States of America.
Yeah, because there was some kind of grudge before that. It's not only the film itself, but there was also, I mean, the Americans backing the efforts to topple Muammar Gaddafi, and I don't know. Yeah, there are still remnants of Muammar Gaddafi, maybe Al-Qaeda affiliates now in Libya. So there are different sides.
But what you were saying, this is not directed against the Americans, but more against the situation itself.
It's not just directed at Americans. There is a kind of layeredness of all kinds of grievances that lives there, and I would almost want to ask us as journalists and intellectuals to see who were the ones, that were demonstrating pro-democracy, like, for example, at Tahrir Square, and who are the ones that are demonstrating now. And I'm convinced that a lot of them are the same. So it's a lot of the same.
The peaceful demonstrations on Tahrir Square were the same people who are throwing stones right now. That's what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. And I've sometimes offhandedly called it the revolution of the men without moustaches.
What do you mean by that?
Well, in the Middle East, in general, and also, like, for example, in Sudan, there's all those places where now we hear of those riots. When you're mature, you start growing a moustache. A beard, beard can be a sign of religiosity, but the moustache is a sign of maturity. And when you look at the countries where we see the rioting, you see a growing number of young men and women that are sometimes well educated, but most of the time jobless, and I would say futureless. They are in limbo. On one hand, they cannot live the lives of their fathers mothers and the uncles. So they cannot do anything with the social capital or the cultural capital that they have from, you know, the fathers and mothers, the way you have authority as a man, it's all changing. And at the same time, a friend of mine said they're licking the shop window of globalization. They can see on their screens, whether it's the iPod or a television or someone else's television, all, let's say, the luxury that modernity and globalization has brought, but they don't have the means to attain that. They don't have jobs. They can even marry. And marriage is a very important moment in their lives to become mature.
Mm-hmm.
So some of those youths are in their 40s. I mean, can you imagine, in the 40s, you're still considered youth. So it is a huge number of women, but especially men, they have the feeling that, you know, life escapes them, the future escapes them, that they have no sense of control over their lives, and that they have no means of gaining respect in whatever way, not socially, not culturally, not economically. So that is why such a huge number of young men are among those that get to the streets for whatever reason.
I heard somebody say this week that they hate America, but if they could get an American passport, they would really jump for it.
Sure. Yeah, that's the reality. Yeah, I mean, going to America is the ambition of many young Arabs, for sure, and Muslims. I mean, getting the education, the best education probably in the world. Yeah, for sure. But still, there is some kind of grudge against the American policy in the Middle East. Probably, if you want to go back to the film rather than politics, if you want to. But we can go on discussing the if you want. But do you want to return to the film to discuss it, or shall we continue with?
No, I think that the film is. My question to you is the film that important as many people think? And I hear Ms. Willemse saying, well, it's not really that important.
Well, in terms of quality, it's, as Salman Rushdie said today on CNN, it's just a piece of garbage.
Yeah.
Seriously, it's just trash. I mean, it's really funny and silly, but. I mean, just a few facts about the film, I mean, from what I have read. First of all, the title, Innocence of Muslim, was given by the man, Nicola. He's an Egyptian Copt, as you said, and also his promoter, someone called Klein. Both of them very much ultra-conservative Christians. They gave the title of this film to fool Muslims because the film was originally supposed to be distributed or disseminated in California. So they wanted to fool Muslims, devout Muslims, to watch the film and then to convert to Christianity after being convinced that Islam is just crap.
That's a really smart plan.
So what happened? This is what, by the way, Klein says in AP, Associated Press. What happened is that no one went to see the film, and in the end, Nicola was forced to dub the film into Arabic and upload it to YouTube. And within a few days, all these protests happened after dubbing these 14 minutes into Arabic. And many people claim that he really did not produce a whole film, 2 hours. It's only 14 minutes because of the the low budget production. Some say it's only $40,000 to $50,000. Yeah.
Yeah, and the money that he got allegedly from his wife's family back in
What
Egypt.
he says, yeah. What he says.
All right. You said I want to watch part of a documentary on photojournalism to show how the strange reality is between the stone throwing mob and the journalists.
Well, the footage that I pointed out to you is about stone thrown Palestinian youths at the West Bank, Gaza, on Friday after Friday prayers.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is that. You want to show it?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Sorry. I couldn't tell.
So the question is, will this get to come back to the film, will this get bigger and bigger? Will the riots get bigger and bigger, or will we finally find out that it's just kind of a play within the media?
Well, just to point out about the footage, what happens here is, of course, that both sides, again, I said both sides, but to some extent it's just young boys, and I think about 30 photojournalists, play into the same game. So the boys go there and relaxed, put up this barricade. They can't ignite the fire. I think they even lent,
the lighter?
The lighter from one of the photojournalists. At a certain moment, it's praying time. So they pray together and they get back again. So what you see is that, yes, there are stone-throwing Palestinian youths. It's not make-believe. It's there. But at the same time, the number of times that it happens, the scale and the frequency of it is much less than is make-believe. And so these journalists need footage, they need pictures, because that's the world wants pictures these days. But the question must be, what are we seeing? Is it a quote-unquote reality that we're watching, or, as I think in this case is quite clear, both sides play into this imagery, almost iconographic, of what youth in Gaza means, what being a youth in Gaza means, and what it means to the political situation there. So in the end, it's all about violence, and it's all about making news, rather than trying to find out what are the grievances, what's living, what do these boys want and feel. And I think it's very important to realize that there are a lot of differences among those Muslims. I mean, you can't just put them in one big group. There's difference of youth, of gender, but also of class and of aspirations. And we have a little grip on that. What I think is very interesting is, once Tunisia, where of course, the revolutions in the Middle East started, in North Africa, got this interim regime, the next day there was in the news this boat that landed on Lampedusa, filled with Tunisian young men. So on the one hand, having democracy, or at least an idea of democracy on the one hand, does not relieve this position of having no sense of future, does not relieve the economic situation. So I think what I think is very important to understand is the problems that we see happening are also our problems. Or if we don't try to understand what's really going on there and just see them as enemies and as with strange emotional beings that can be ignited whenever that prophet is abused, if the otherness, if we make this complete distinction between ourselves as rational beings and those others, I think that problem is going to be at Europe's doorstep. It's already there. I mean, this is our world. It's not
already there, as in the riots in Paris, or
as well. The Tunisian migrants, and as they come from Senegal, Tunisia, whatever, in Lampedusa, Ceuta. But indeed also, I think, the violence that we find in the suburbs and banlieues in big cities in Europe.
Yeah. Do you think this will blow over, or will this be the start of an...
Well, no one knows, but hopefully no more escalations will happen. I mean, in France, they've just published the cartoons of Muhammad as one reaction and one way of showing that no one can threaten free speech. Free speech is lovely. Everyone loves free speech, but not at the expense of, let's say, others. I mean, here we have something, a thorny topic, which is this free speech or hate speech? Because for some people it's hate speech. They're inciting violence and inciting hatred among religions. So others, they say no, this is free speech. We are free to say whatever we want. But yeah, so it's a bit tricky here.
Yeah, and I think it's not up to politicians or, let's say, intellectual laypersons to decide. Charlie
Hebron, the magazine in
there have been now
France.
Apparently Syrian Muslims in Paris will try them in court in order to have their case decided by a legal institution. And I think that's what you need to do. I mean, we also, if our Jews in Holland are abused during football games or whatever, the director of the Jewish Center also goes to court. And I think that's the thing to do. I mean, you cannot decide beforehand what is legitimate to say or not. I think free speech is something very valuable, and we really have to try and find its borders and maybe stretch it sometimes. And at the same time, I think we have legal mechanisms that if you feel abused in your dignity and you want to someone to be punished, then we have legal ways to do so. So I think that's democracy. Democracy is not that I decide what another can say, or a politician can decide what someone else says. I think we have this trias politica and, you know, the legal system in order to...
We will see where it leads us. Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.